My name is Jerry Butker. I'm president of the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association. I want to welcome everyone tonight to our candidates forum. I'm going to ask everyone to please turn off cell phones because it will interfere with the microphones and we'll hear all kinds of noise. Before we start, I just want to talk about a couple of things quickly that the Ward 3 Association is doing. So, somebody's got a cell phone. Got to turn them off. We have our second annual Ward 3 Vegetable Garden Tour on Saturday, August 4th. August 6th, from 10 to 2. We have 8 gardens and small farms in Ward 3. And people will be able to do it by bike or by car. We are also going to have at the Montview recreation area where we have refreshments. We're going to have a number of agricultural and conservation organizations that are going to be there with information about what they do. They include Organic Farming Organization, CISA, NOFA, Grow Food Northampton, 3 County Fair, which is interested in developing more exhibitions from Ward 3 people. So it's going to be a really, really good tour. Anyone who went last year knows that it's good, and you get to see Ward 3 in a way that you can't imagine what it looks like from sort of the inside. So Joanne Makowitz, where are you, Joanne? Joanne is in the back. She has tickets if you want them. They're $8 before the day of the tour, $10 a day of. 2 other things that we're working on quickly that I just want to update people. One is the Pomeroy Terrace Historic District. It's an area that goes from Hawley Street, Bridge Street, Pomeroy Terrace, and Hancock Street. It started a number of years ago to create a historic district. People in the area, we ran a tour for them, and for anybody else who was interested, there's enormous support for this from the people who live in that area. And the plan, as a matter of fact, several people have asked if they could have their houses included because they weren't. So the planning department is working on the outlines of the district and which houses should be in or out. We hope that we'll get to this in the fall. The third thing we're working on is brand new, is we've established a committee that's going to be working on repairing old and broken gravestones in Bridge Street Cemetery. There's hundreds of them that are broken. It's kind of the historical legacy of the city has been destroyed in a lot of places. And we have a small committee that's working that we would love to have more people join, that we're going to try to get eventually a CPA application for money to repair those stones. We're going to be doing a tour with a noted historian of grave sites. So anybody who's interested, see me. We'd love to have you join us. So I'm now going to turn this over to Fran Volkman. Because there are so many people on our board who are involved with one candidate or the other, we decided this time that we were going to bring in an independent third-party moderator from outside Ward 3. The 2 candidates met, agreed on Fran Volkman. Fran met with them, worked out the procedures for the evening, which I'm not even familiar with. And so Fran is going to introduce the candidates, introduce the procedure, and get on with the evening. So, Fran, it's all yours.
Thank you. So this is a very, are you out there? Can you hear me? Yes.
Very loud. Full speakers.
So this is a very important evening for Ward 3 and for the city of Northampton. On August 2nd, Ward 3 voters are going to elect one of these 2 candidates as a member of the Northampton City Council. The City Council is, as you all know, a critically important body for the governance of the city. And with only 9 councilors, every one of them is extremely important. It has to be chosen with the utmost care. This evening, you're going to get the opportunity to get to know these 2 candidates better, to learn about their backgrounds and perspectives, and to ask them questions that will help you to decide how to vote. At the outset, I hope that you'll join me in welcoming these candidates, Arnold Levinson and Owen Freeman-Daniels, and in thanking them for their thanking them for their willingness to take on this important and often difficult job on behalf of all of us. So, I accepted this invitation to moderate the forum with great pleasure. I think I'm the person with the whitest hair, and so I've been involved myself in city governments for quite a while and served 6 years on the city council some time ago. So I'm interested in the issues and I'm interested in this race. But at the same time, prior to these meetings, I had not met either of the candidates. And I do not support either of one of them over the other. So my job tonight will be to facilitate the process and to make it possible for you to learn as much as possible about the candidates in approximately an hour's time from when the questions start. I've also asked Mary Gottdiener to come along. She's also from outside Ward 3, and she's going to serve as timekeeper. Mary has been instructed to be ruthless in keeping us all on time and on schedule. I'm very grateful to her for taking on this task tonight. She'll be playing a central role throughout the evening, and she's going to give 1 minute, 30 second, and 0 waves to the candidates in green, yellow, and red pads that she's going to hold up. So here's how we're going to proceed. Each candidate will present an opening statement of not more than 3 minutes. The order of presentations will be determined by a coin toss, which we haven't done yet. Then we'll move directly to questions. There are 2 types of questions. As you know, Ward 3 voters were invited to submit questions ahead of time to me via email. And 16, 17 of you did that, and so I have a bunch of questions. And I collected them all and shared them with the candidates. And I've also selected some of these questions to ask you as we go through the evening, to ask you. The other questions will come from the floor, from you. When you stand up to give a question, please give your name and address, as they do in the city council. We ask that these questions be addressed to both of the candidates. It goes without saying that questions should not be slanted to favor one candidate or to put a candidate in a negative light. I have a special nose for zingers, and I'll disallow them. We'll alternate between the email questions and questions from the floor. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes to respond to each question, with the order again alternating between the candidates. And each candidate will then have a 1 minute rebuttal after each question. Finally, each candidate will present a closing statement of not more than 2 minutes. And the order of presentations will be the reverse of that of the opening statement. So, have you got all that?
Talk into the mic, everybody.
Okay.
Mics are primarily for recording purposes for Northampton television. The old speakers in here just can't cut it.
So,
no, it's for recording purposes.
do you have any questions of clarification before we begin?
Yeah, just talking about that.
Okay, so now we're going to have the coin toss to determine who will make the first opening statement. Okay, so how do we do this?
All heads.
You call heads. Okay, if it's heads, Owen goes first. If it's tails, Arnie goes first. Tails. Arnie goes first.
Good evening. Can everybody hear that?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good. Good evening. Thank you for attending this debate. My name is Arnie Levinson. I have worked in Northampton for the past 38 years as the head of a successful orthodontic practice. I have lived in Ward 3 for 16 years. And if elected as your city council, I intend to deal with a wide range of issues that face Ward 3. To resolve disputes, more is needed than rhetoric and campaign literature. I have already been working on some of the main concerns that I've heard from Ward 3 residents. Redevelopment of the three-county fairgrounds would benefit our local economy, but we face tough choices about how to upgrade the property. We have to be concerned about not unfairly burdening certain neighborhoods. I have met with fairground representatives and abutters to discuss the stormwater runoff issue. I am trying to negotiate an amicable resolution of that problem. My opponent doesn't think it's a conflict of interest for a city councilor to sit on the board of a private corporation that is developing the fairgrounds. I disagree. It's important that this process remain accessible to the public, with no one having special privileges to hold regular, closed-door meetings with their council. The Meadows is another key agricultural resource in Ward 3. Meeting with the farmers, I have learned and helped to understand their concerns, not only regarding safety, but also the concerns regarding intrusion of the public on private property.
1 minute.
Has my opponent met with the farmers to discuss these issues? I've been informed that he has not. Here are some other problems that I have addressed. I held a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce to discuss the King Street redevelopment plan. I have met with representatives from Coca-Cola to improve signage that will redirect truck traffic. And I have considered the issue of infill, which has been intensifying in our ward. These are only a few of the examples of what I have been doing. And as your full-time city council, I will be an advocate for all in Ward 3.
Okay, thank you. The second opening statement comes from Owen Freeman-Daniels.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association for sponsoring this. And I'm going to shamelessly plug the Vegetable Garden Tour, which I heard was a fantastic event last year. I volunteered for the whole thing, so I actually didn't get to see the gardens, but I heard they were really great. And I'm also selling tickets, so if you want to buy a ticket, you can find me afterwards. I'll be volunteering this year too, so I wouldn't even know how good it is this year. Again, my name is Owen Freeman-Daniels. I want to represent the residents of Ward 3 on the City Council. My message is open and honest. I'm steeped in progressive values, and I've experience working in the community. I've experience working for public education. I fundraised for the Northampton Education Foundation and served on their endowment distribution committee. I've experience in the local economy. I served on the committees of the Northampton Area Young Professionals, the Western Massachusetts Economic Development Council, and the Valley Time Trade. I've experience working on policy issues. I've served on the board of the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association for nearly 4 years now. There are big differences between me and my opponent. First, I have disclosed my views about what kinds of policies I want to see in Northampton. My opponent has not. Second, I've worked hard at getting people to the policy table, and establishing rapport among different groups, and getting involved early. My opponent has not. And third, I have a history of working in Ward 3, Northampton, and the region on pressing issues like economic growth, housing, open space, education, and safety. My opponent, he does not have this history. I care deeply about the place I was born in and where I've always lived. I am faithful as an advocate and an honest representative of the concerns of the community. My history shows that I'm interested in bringing people together to talk openly and honestly about tough issues and trying to hammer out good policy that has broad consensus. I'm open to different perspectives, and I'm a respectful listener. I'm running because I believe Ward 3 can lead this city, but only if it does so with good policy, not obstruction. Ward 3 can lead this city by viewing our great challenges as opportunities to take the initiative, not to criticize. Ward 3 can lead this city by all of us working together, not telling other people what to do. In this forum, you will hear about my hopes for the future of Ward 3 and also about my history. I will stand behind my history and I will not disguise my hopes. Ask me anything tonight. I'm Owen Freeman-Daniels, and I want to represent the residents of the Ward 3 on the Northampton City Council.
Now we're going to move directly into the questions. And the first question I'm going to ask, it's one that one of you sent in via email. And here it is. It will go first to Owen. The Charter Reform Committee has made recommendations to rewrite Northampton's charter. Two of the items up for discussion are the role of the mayor and the role of the city councilor. What are your thoughts on how these two roles might change?
Thank you. That's a very good question. It's one that we had sent ahead, so I have a little preparation for it. But there are some interesting things about Northampton's charter. First, you know, Northampton is one of the only two cities in the Commonwealth where the mayor chairs the city council. I believe that most of the work having to do with the charter is about balance of power and the separation of powers. And I believe that this city is classified as a strong mayor city, and that we could stand to have more deliberation on the city council floor and a little bit less power from the administration. Now, the charter review, I have a little bit of experience with that because I backed and worked very heavily on the campaign of Jesse Adams, who made charter review his top legislative priority. And I was very pleased to see that he got that accomplished, even though not every single piece of the charter got a chance to be changed or reworked. You know, I believe that we should be looking at a different way to do elections and preliminaries, and possibly a different way of looking at board nominations to the city committees such as Planning Board or Conservation Commission. When the charter review gets sent to the state, I want it to come back to the citizens, and I think we should all have an open discussion about it and vote on it in a referendum that's citywide. What I can do as your counselor is I can help sponsor these discussions. I'm in favor of many of them. Some of them will have to get changed and morphed, but that will happen in our discussions and throughout the process. Thank you.
I agree with Owen as far as the balancing of power. I also believe that the mayor's office has too much power, and more power needs to be directed to the city council. Quite frankly, the mayor does not need to be chairman of the city council and the school committee. The mayor can act as a tiebreaker in both of those organizations. I also would go on to say that I believe that term limits is an idea that I think we should consider. I believe that the mayor should have a term limit of 8 years, and the city council should have a term limit of 8 years. And I also would like to make sure that the registrar stays an elected gatekeeper. One of the other concerns that I have is the overall timing of the meetings of the council. I think the council needs to make sure that everybody is able to attend their meetings. And sometimes meetings are scheduled at hours which are difficult. Thank you.
So now we have rebuttals. Owen?
You know, term limits is often considered to be a one-party issue or something like that. And I'm actually open to talking about term limits. I think that term limits on higher levels of power, you know, in state or federal governments can be difficult because there are so few opportunities to serve. But here in Northampton, we have more than enough opportunities to serve. We've got commissions, boards, all sorts of places where good public servants can move out of elected office and still do a lot of very good things for the city. But I'll be honest with you, I'm a little concerned, sir, about your picking 8 years. I'm not sure where that number came from.
From the President of the United States.
I'm not sure where that number came from. And we have to remember that many councilors that we have been very happy with or who have been served their constituents very well for a long time, Marianne LaBarge, Jim Dostal, Michael Bardsley, they may get bumped out by that number. I think we should have a discussion about that.
Okay. Arnie?
I think that it's fine that we have a discussion. I still maintain that if the President of the United States can serve for 8 years, then the mayor can serve for 8 years. And I also believe that there can be new blood, which can give the council new ideas, a fresh perspective. I recognize the service of Mary Ann Labarge and the other city councilors, such as Michael Bardsley, but I still maintain that the more people that get involved in city council work, the better off the city will be.
Now we're going to move to a question from the floor. Who would like to ask a question? Yes, sir.
Tom Blakesley, 25 Graves Avenue. I'd like to know what the candidates know and how they feel about Harrison House.
About what, sorry, the last thing you were asking about what they know about Harrison.
Hairston House?
First?
Yes. Okay, Arnie, you're the first.
I'll be candid, I don't know very much about Harrison House. So quite frankly, I cannot answer your question. I'd be more than willing to learn, but issues relating to that question is something that I'm not familiar with.
This is a very serious election, and it does have consequences. It is not just in Ward 3. I do believe Ward 3 can be the leader of this city, and that's another reason why this election has consequences. Because I think that what happens in Ward 3 is a great way to expand out and be a model for the rest of the city. I've canvassed many, many, many streets in this ward. And I also had an opportunity to sit on July 4th with the residents of Hairston House and talk to them and hear each and every one of their stories. What they liked about Northampton, what they liked about Hairston House. And I got to tell you, I was very touched. I know them from the past, from the Ward 3 Association when we needed to distribute flyers and materials. They were always willing to volunteer to walk the streets and drop off material. Hairston House, so those of you who don't know, it's something I think is enormously valuable in the community. It's a alcohol and drug rehabilitation program. It's residential. There are numerous people living in a single home on Graves Avenue, and to a man, they all really appreciated being there, and they all really appreciated the support they got from Northampton, from Graves Avenue residents and from Northampton in general. I think these are model organizations that we should be seeing more of them in Northampton because they help the people that have fallen by the wayside, that haven't succeeded as well as they could in our society. And I think everyone here should give themselves a pat on the back because they've welcomed Hairston House into their community. And so much so that they're invisible to many of us. We just think of them as neighbors. So I think it's a wonderful program.
Well said.
Arnie, do you want to?
No, I compliment Owen for his involvement, and I compliment the community for their interaction with that organization, for that home. And I'm very glad to hear about it and learn about it. Thank you.
Okay then, I guess.
Can I just add something? Can I add one more thing? You know, I'm sorry I'm going to talk more and more about this, but I think this is a great turning point for us here, at least in Ward 3 and for us in the city. When we can have these kinds of programs and not get upset or excited about them just because the word drugs are involved or just because alcohol rehabilitation is involved. I advocate for these kinds of programs. I think it's great when we do them, and I want to have more discussions about them, but in this tolerant environment. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the next question from the emails that I've received, and it's this. The DPW is currently undertaking a review of the city's infrastructure needs so as to make a long-range plan for upgrading its infrastructure systems. What infrastructure needs do you see in Ward 3, and how would you prioritize them? Owen.
You know, if we do this, I'm going to get every hand question.
Do you think we should do something about that?
I'll say it now. Maybe we should. Yeah. So this is a tough question because when it comes to infrastructure, it seems as though everything is important. So when you talk about priority, that's difficult. I believe that this is going to be the decade of public works. For far too long, We've let different elements of our infrastructure languish, and we really have to look into making a sustained commitment. This includes budgetary commitment to public works. Now, where would I prioritize? Number one, I think would be stormwater. Ward 3 is close to the center of the city. Northampton, I don't know if you know, but it all slants down into the center of the city. So we have a lot of stormwater issues in Ward 3. It's the pipes. Pipes under a lot of the streets cause the failure of the streets that we all know about, which I'll get to in a second. Also pumping the stormwater that's collected out. That's another concern. I sat on the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association for many years. I've listened to Fred talk about all the pumping that needs to take place to get the water out of Northampton. You know, the DPW is short-handed, about a half dozen men. So this is another serious commitment that we have to make as a city, and it's a serious discussion that we have to have, and stormwater, I think, is number one. Number two is the streets. And I'm not just talking about potholes here. I'm talking about sidewalks. I'm talking about bike lanes. Traffic calming has to be part of every conversation when we talk about redoing the streets. Street lights, trees. I know this is arcane, but we have to look at wetlands maintenance programs. My experience with this has been putting the infrastructure into the conversation when the Zoning Revisions Committee talks about smart growth. And from my years working on the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association and my support of the Traffic Calming Committee that the association had created.
In terms of prioritizing DPW works, it is very difficult to make a distinguish between roads and stormwater. The sewers of Ward 3 are among the oldest in the city. As a matter of fact, there's no stormwater system on Bridge Street on Route 9 from Old Ferry Road to Palmer Road, and this is an evacuation route. So I can only imagine what would happen if flooding occurred and there needed to be an evacuation. So certainly stormwater drainage is critical. And as I understand it, there is a study being undertaken by CDM, which is a consulting agency, and they need to make that report public as soon as possible. So all of us can examine this particular issue. The roads are certainly something that we in Northampton look at with a guest. And it's not, as Owen has said, not just potholes, but it's the way that people perceive our city. If somebody wants to come here and set up a business and they look at our roads and they're bumping along and falling into potholes, they're going to think twice about relocating our businesses. Third, I think that we need to consider redoing or taking care of City Hall. It looks old, it looks tired, and I'd like to see the asphalt, which is crumbling along its side, repaired once and for all to improve our impression of our city. Last, I think we have to we have to consider our water pipes. We've got a brand new reservoir, but there's sediment which has been building up in our water pipes for years. All of us have seen this. I don't think it affects our drinking water, but certainly that's something that we need to consider.
Okay, Owen,
Again, very hard to prioritize when it comes to infrastructure spending. When it comes to a process, I mean, you have to have an open process when it comes to deciding about these things. The tricky part is that everyone thinks that their road is the worst. We know North Street's really bad, so we know that's worse than a lot of other roads. But, you know, to be honest, sir, I'm surprised that you talk about relocating businesses, because I haven't seen in any of your materials or in any of your discussions anything having to do with economic development. Now, I've put out material having to do with economic development. I'm committed to economic development when it comes to small businesses, when it comes to the arts, when it comes to tourism, when it comes to agriculture, and also traditional firms. I have taken stands on this. This seems to me that you're putting this out there very late, and I'm surprised about that.
Whether you, quite frankly, that's very interesting, though. I'm thinking about how does somebody look at a city? What is the perspective of somebody visiting our city? If people are endangering their lives, bumping along on our roads, then that doesn't create a very good impression. We need to compete with the rest of the country to draw business here to Northampton. The first thing people are going to notice, gee whiz, oh, that road's out in good shape. Would I want to have my business there? Would I want to live there?
Okay. All right, now we're ready for another question from the floor. Yes?
I don't need to hear either candidate talk about what they've done since.
Could you
they've
please
declared.
identify yourself?
I'm sorry, my name is Shoshana Marchand. I live on Orchard Street. I don't feel a need to hear either candidate talk about what they've done since they declared, but I'd like to hear them both talk a little bit about what they've done in the period before this year, since they've both been longtime residents of the city.
Okay. I think Arnie started.
Do you want to switch up?
I'm going to switch next.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Sure.
Because I don't
As you're both longtime excellent residents of the city,
Right.
I'm hoping you can both speak to any service or history you have of working for the city or the ward before you've declared, either of you,
Fine, thank you.
that you were running.
When I first came to town, I felt it was important for me to become members of various organizations. One of the organizations that I joined was the Chamber of Commerce. And I was lucky enough and privileged to meet John Gear. John Gear, as you know, had a jewelry shop. And John was concerned with parking in downtown Northampton. John and I consulted, and he asked me to develop a parking plan. I'm not saying that the words that and the message that I conveyed in that parking plan were totally responsible, but it was from that report that the Gear Garage was built. I was asked as part of the Ward 3 Association to head the Neighborhood Watch. The Neighborhood Watch began before the fires. So I led the Neighborhood Watch, met with all the volunteers, walked their neighborhoods, discussed their problems, and tried to get a better idea of how we could work within the neighborhoods. An outgrowth of the Neighborhood Watch was the cleanup in Ward 3, which has been successful going on 2 years. And that's been an important part of my activities here in Northampton.
I have a lot of different kinds of community experience, so I want to dwell specifically on 3 different elements. 1 is economic growth, 2 is sustainable land use, and 3 is just general consensus building and capacity building. When it comes to economic growth, I got involved very early with the Northampton area young professionals pretty quickly after they started their programming. I joined the board, and I helped introduce new programming and introduce the established community leaders to the next generation. I also worked on the Western Mass Economic Development Council for over 2 years now on their subcommittee, and also I helped start the Valley Time Trade, which is an interesting organization. It's an alternative to the regular currency that we have, which is the US dollar, and it's a way to exchange services throughout the community. I thought that was a really great community effort. You know, I'm also going to take credit because I was there and I helped develop, I was actually the co-creator of the Ward 3 Neighborhood Watch. That was 2 years ago, and it was done after the reaction, after the fires. And Arnie and I did it together. In fact, I nominated him to be president because, you know, he was retired, and I thought he could devote his full-time best efforts to it. We've had 2 cleanups in those last 2 years. I have participated in both of them. But also, more importantly, in trying to get the Neighborhood Watch off the ground, I penned a privacy policy and code of conduct for the Neighborhood Watch and for the street coordinators that would be the backbone of it. I felt that that was very important because of a lot of the community concerns around neighborhood programs around the country, having to do with civil rights and racial profiling. So I penned those. They were eventually adopted by the Neighborhood Watch, and I feel very proud of that.
All right? No? Okay. Do you want to add anything?
Oh yeah, sure. If you're going to give me another minute to talk about my experience, I'll talk about my experience. The Ward 3 Neighborhood Association. You know, the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association for the past few years has worked a lot on sustainable land use and zoning. I know these are kind of boring issues, but they really will affect the neighborhoods, at least in the language they may affect them seriously, although I think in many ways Ward 3 is kind of the model of sustainable land use and development. One thing that I'm particularly proud of is the creation of the Zoning Revisions Committee. This was a tiny little notice in the city's master plan, and the initial proposal was to just have experts and some elected officials sit on it. I penned the memorandum and lobbied the committee that eventually put 3 ordinary citizens on the Zoning Revisions Committee. I was very proud of that, and I also was very proud that at every time the Zoning Revisions Committee had 5 Ward 3 members on it.
Okay, now, with your permission, gentlemen, I'm going to flip the orders now. We're at the halfway point. And so from now on, Arnie will get the first chance at the questions that I ask, and Owen will get the first chance at the questions from the floor. Okay? So it's time for me to ask one now, and interestingly, here it is. What are some ways you agree or disagree with the recommendations of the Zoning Revisions Committee?
Speak up.
Say it
You want me to
again,
repeat that?
please.
What are some ways that you agree or disagree with the recommendations of the Zoning Revisions Committee? Arnie.
Thank you. The Zoning Revisions Committee has presented a number of different issues. Certainly, I would agree that we can make better use of our existing structures. I have no problems with that. We have healthy neighborhoods, and I think the Zoning Revisions Committee wants to maintain that. However, when they start talking about changes in relationships between homes, and they want to narrow the distance between one home to another, in some cases to as little as 4 feet, I get a little bit nervous. I worry about water draining off a home. I worry about the accessibility of emergency vehicles to the backs of those homes. I worry about just being very, very close to one another if somebody wants to play music. It's loud and so on. In addition to that, among the zoning run with the ZRC, they talked about home businesses. And they said that the businesses could run from 7 until 8. Oh, I think those always need to be examined. And lastly, the number of businesses and how they're going to be regulated was going to be put on the back of the neighbors. I don't think the neighbors want to be involved in policing home businesses. So that's an additional concern of mine.
Owen.
Well, this is apropos. I just talked about some of my experience with the Zoning Revisions Committee. I've been following it throughout its inception. As I said, I did help lobby effectively to get citizen involvement on the Zoning Revisions Committee, and we had a lot of good Ward 3 participation in the Zoning Revisions Committee. What's important is that this is a long process, and I can commit to having more dialogue, doing more outreach as it moves through the planning board and up to the city council level. I think the recommendations that the zoning committee made, they're a great first start. And one thing that they tried to do was they tried to define the major elements that make up the character of our neighborhood. You know, I'm going to just quickly address what I'm unhappy that they didn't get to. They didn't get to talking about cluster developments and townhouses, or some more specific information about design standards on new developments or major upgrades. I have some experience with trying to help the Zoning Revisions Committee understand Ward 3's issues, because I was one of the people that crafted the infill and design survey, which was used by the Zoning Revisions Committee and taken by many people here in Ward 3. So that's going to be part of the process by which we understand this. You know, the other thing that I'm surprised about is your claim, sir, that you have followed the Zoning Revisions Committee. I've been to a number of their meetings. I was part of the formation, and it seems that this is, again, you're coming late in the 11th hour to criticize a long process that there has been many chances to give input to. And you know, I want also to say this concern about narrowing distances between houses, I will get to.
Hello, I think if you look on television, you'll be able to see that I was at the last number of the zoning revision meetings. As a matter of fact, I was there for the final report. And in point of fact, I got up and spoke about that because of my concern that there was unequal concerns between Ward 3 and, from my standpoint, the way Ward 3 was being targeted perhaps is a strong word, relative to Ward 2. So there were more changes going on in Ward 3 than in Ward 2. Another thing that I'm concerned about is thinking about density. Density is terrific. It makes it easy perhaps for people to walk to schools, bike, etc. But we all have to worry about parking. And this past winter, the parking issue certainly raised its very ugly head.
So I just want to repeat that I believe that this is a last-minute criticism. The report was made after, the report was made in, 2 weeks ago? It was not made very much even before you declared your candidacy for office. It seems to me like it's a political strategy to show up at some of these meetings. That's an interesting strategy. I envy it. But I'm more interested in policy, and getting these policies hammered out and getting the right people to the table, getting everyone to the table, really, to discuss these things throughout the process. And I also want to say, you know, your worry about the density of neighborhoods and so on. It seems as though you are committed to opposing some of the changes that the Zoning Revisions Committee has made.
That's correct.
Well, you know, Hancock Street, which is a beautiful street that you live on, if we kept the zoning that you currently have, of the 10 homes that live there, yours and one other would be the only ones that would be allowed to be there. If that's the kind of zoning that you want, I'm not in favor of that.
Well, I'm very sorry.
Okay, that will. Okay, now we are ready to move to a question from the floor. Let me say that there are only going to be 2 more questions from the floor, so make them quick. Yes.
Hi, Danielle.
I'm sorry, I pointed to somebody in the front row, but you can be the next one.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Heather McLaughlin. I live at 193 North Street. And my question is, whom will you support in the mayoral elections and why?
That's a great question. I believe, as I've said before, that Ward 3 can lead this city. That Ward 3 has the tough problems and all of the tools and the abilities of all the people here, plus many, many, many other people who I've spoken with that want to contribute their task, their talents, their time, to hammer out good policy and be a model for the rest of the city. We can lead. I don't think that question should be, who are we supporting for mayor, but of which of the mayoral candidates should be looking here in Ward 3 and paying attention to the issues that we're getting out. Now, I have not declared my support for either candidate, and I don't think that that's appropriate, given that neither candidates have really put out their full positions. Neither candidates have made major political or policy commitments. My opponent, though, on the other hand, has endorsed a mayoral candidate. He has had his name on every piece of literature. He's had him at every one of his campaign events. And yet he claims to be an independent. That's it.
Yes, I have made an endorsement. My endorsement is from Michael Bardsley. And I've endorsed Michael Bardsley because of his open and transparent policies and his accessibility to the average citizen. I'm disappointed that Owen won't make an endorsement at this time. I think that's kind of waffling as far as this is concerned. We both know what candidates there are. We both really know what their policies are. Both are established here in the city. Both are well known to everybody. So I think it's very easy for us to make a decision and simply say who you're going to endorse. Both candidates for mayor, I think, are good candidates. and I could be happy supporting, should I be elected city councilor, I could be very happy working with David Narkowitz.
I disagree. I don't believe it's an easy choice. This is why we have debates. This is why we ask the candidates to meet us. This is why we ask them to put out literature and make commitments. They have not done that yet, or if they have, it's on the very early stages. You know, to endorse a candidate that early out of the gate and to be so tied at the hip to one of them makes me believe that they're running basically the same campaign. It doesn't speak well to independence, which I believe you claim yourself to be.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
All right, yes.
Yes, I do claim to be independent, and as a matter of fact, I cherish that distinction. I cherish that distinction because it means that I don't use a litmus of one party or another party to make a decision. I don't think that's appropriate. My opponent has made no bones about the fact that he does believe that a political party is important in making decisions. That's not the way I work. But in terms of making a decision regarding the mayor, I think everybody knows both candidates. David Narkowitz is well known here in the community, well respected. Michael Bosley, well known in this community and respected. And I think it is certainly easy for us to make a decision and to be proud of that decision. As I said, I would be glad to work with either candidate if I were elected to the city council.
Okay. All right, now another email question. This is my last one I have to think hard about. Okay, what kind of development, business, housing, recreational, do you think is appropriate for Ward 3? What do you think the role of the ward councilor should be when major development projects are proposed? All right.
The thing about Ward 3 is that it truly is unique. It's unique because we have agriculture, we have industry, we have historic districts, we have recreational areas, and we even have part of the downtown. And it's critical that we balance competing needs of all these various entities. My concern would be that one entity does not damage the quality of life of another entity. And as part of and as my role of being a city councilor, I want to ensure that Ward 3 will be treated fairly relative to the other wards of the city. In this regard, I think we have to be very careful in how we deal with wetlands. The project on North Street, which my opponent refused to be involved in, wanted to bring parts of their development as close as 12 feet to the wetlands. It's been shown in many, many studies that the minimum distance for safe wetlands would be 35 feet. And quite frankly, I'd like to see that dimension restored as far as future development is concerned. So I am comfortable with development. I'm comfortable with development at the three-county fairgrounds. But the concerns of the neighborhood must be addressed.
So I think that the answer to that question, business, housing, recreational, educational, historic, agricultural, I think for both of us is all of the above. This is what makes Ward 3 such a powerful player in the city. We can have these competing interests. We see them every day. This is why we can lead. We can work on the good policy. You have to get involved early, though. I hear my opponent talking about the North Street project. Sir, where were you? I actually did go to those meetings. Those were a few years ago, so I understand maybe if you weren't paying attention. But I did go to those meetings. Also, I'm in a butter. If they go through, they will be in my backyard. My personal feeling about them is different from my public stance. My personal feeling is I don't want to be looking at the backs of houses in my backyard. I like the trees. But the role of the city councilor is not to tell other people what to do. It's not to tell everybody what to do, especially not at the last minute, like your comments about the North Street Association. I also believe that the city councilor can do things when it comes to, for instance, wetlands protections. And when you create greater wetlands buffers, which I'm not against, what you do is you don't just do it in that one spot. You don't just do it in that one little parcel of North Street. You take away property rights from people, you take them away from everyone who fits into that category. It's not just the person who wants to build the development, it's the person who wants to add to their garage or build a garage in the backyard, or someone who wants to subdivide their property just to add an in-law apartment. These are serious policy issues. They're not last-minute, on-the-spot decisions.
As far as your involvement with the North Street project, I'm glad that you do have a concern, because based upon what I could find out, not only did you not get involved early in the process, but you didn't even join the North Street Association, which had an ongoing dialogue relating to this issue. That's certainly your choice, and that's certainly your privilege. But the North Street Association was extremely active in confronting this particular project. And I'm sorry that you chose not to be involved.
My hat's off to them. I'm sorry.
Okay, go on.
My hat's off to the North Street Association because they did effectively raise a lot of concerns, especially having to do with the wetlands, some of them having to do with traffic, that really reduced the project to what I think is a relatively decent proposal. Whether or not it actually happens is another story. I was involved, Arnie. I was involved early. I also saw, I was part of the Ward 3 effort, the Ward 3 Neighborhood Association effort to foster a dialogue between the residents and the developer in that project. The developer was willing. The residents, we had to work to bring them to the table. I also have other experience working with the Sustainable Northampton Study Group and the Smith Landscape Studies Program. All of these things tie together to understand that when you become city councilor, you don't get to be the boss of the planning board or the conservation commission. You can pass an ordinance, but they're the ones that adjudicate property rights.
Okay, now we're ready for our last question from the floor.
Thanks. I was just wondering, what tools do you have as a council member to help us as a ward get better access to the river, to get more parks and open space, or to utilize the parks and open space that we have in the ward better? It seems like a lot of resources are going towards big conservation parcels that may not be in the denser parts of the city, and it would be great to see some effort to really improve access to and availability of parks and access to the river in the ward.
Okay, did you hear that question?
I'm not very well, I'm not sure. Could you come up here with a microphone and ask that question again?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Now I can, yes.
Okay. As a council person, what tools will you have available to you to help us to get better access as a ward to the river and to get more pocket parks and improvements to existing open spaces?
I think, Owen, you're the first one this time.
That's a really good question. And it's a matter of concern for, I think, many people in Ward 3. Some of them who live very close to the neighbors and they find that going down to the meadows or going and walking along the dike or other small green spaces in Ward 3 are a real pleasure for them to be in. I have a bit of experience with this. I was part of the group that worked with the Smith Landscape Studies program that fashioned a survey for the residents of Ward 3 to ask them how they use recreational space, what they want to see happen. And they came up with a number of great suggestions. This was over a year ago now. And many of them have to do with opening up access to space that's already public, and some of it has to do with clarifying and maybe doing a bit of a land swap or understanding some sort of public-private usage when it comes to space that is now private, but that the public treats as public or wants to treat as public. Northampton owns land in the meadows that's right on the river, but access to it is very difficult. I'm interested in creating better access to it so that the public can enjoy this wonderful resource that we have. But I have to say, the farmers down in the meadows, and by the way, sir, I have talked to the farmers down there. I guess you didn't hear about that.
That's right.
They tell us that they have done a lot of maintenance to the public roads, and that we're going to have to be equitable with them if we are going to expect them to respect the public. They're going to expect us to respect the public and private property that they have down there. So I do believe that as city councilor, you can get to some creative ways to make public space more accessible. I think there's public space that we can get very close to the river and make that more accessible, but it will take some work and it will take some dialogue.
I think we have to be very careful as to what we consider open space and what we consider private land. In reviewing what were many very nice proposals by the Smith College, I came up to one of the women who proposed opening up areas in the meadow and told her that her plan, unfortunately, involved private land. And the way that her plan was designed would not be acceptable to the owners of that private land. So, if we're talking about going into the meadows, yes, there are some public roads, but the public needs to be aware of what is public and what is private. Ward 3 Association used to have a cleanup, and it was a cleanup. Why? Because the public intruded on these private lands, and it created untold problems. Once upon a time, gleaning was allowed in the meadows. What happened? There was an accident, the farmers were sued, and that was the end of their allowing the public use in the meadows. So, as far as open space is concerned, I think it's great. We're lucky that we have Look Park. We're lucky that we have Child's Park. We're lucky that we have the 3 county fairgrounds. We're lucky that we have Sheldon Fields. We're lucky that we have nice front yards in front of our homes. These are wonderful open spaces. And unfortunately, that's one of the areas of concern that I have with the zoning revision plan, that a lot of this open space will be compromised. So going forward, I think it's going to be very difficult for us to consider certain areas of our ward to be public. We have to remember that the bulk of the meadows, the overwhelming percentage of the meadows is private, and the farmers are an agricultural resource that needs to be protected.
Sir, of the last 5 parks and public spaces you named, only 1 was in Ward 3. The question is about how we can increase the access to other public spaces in Ward 3. I'm also going to say that I don't believe the Zoning Revisions Committee made any recommendations to develop publicly owned land. Most of the recommendations are about developing privately owned land. So that's incongruous with what you said.
30 seconds.
Now, I think you're hitting upon a real difference between my opponent and myself, because I believe that the meadows, while it needs to be respected, especially by the public, should be open and accessible. My opponent has said that it's very important that recreational uses are extremely limited.
I can't believe that you would take private land and turn it over to the public. That's beyond my comprehension, sir. We have to respect private property. This is the foundation of what goes on, of what is important here in the United States. Private property is private property. It isn't what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine. I simply don't agree with that proposition whatsoever. As far as me saying that the Zoning Revisions Committee, if I said that, what I meant to say was the Smith study. The Smith study, when I looked at it, had plans to actually intrude upon the farmland. That, as I said, is not appropriate. As far as pocket parks throughout Ward 3, quite frankly, I think the green space in front of our homes almost is the same as a pocket park. It gives us the idea of what's nice.
Okay, folks, that's all the time we have for questions. So we're going to move now to the closing statements. And the first one will be given by Owen.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. It's hot here. Thanks for lasting. If you choose to elect me as city councilor, I will seek to work with you to help Ward 3 lead this city. How can Ward 3 lead the city? We can take our tough problems and find creative ways to solve them. We can show the rest of the city what an honest, informed, and engaged population can do. It will be hard work, and we will need to involve as many people as possible. What I can do is get involved early and get your voices to the table before decisions get made. I will keep the Ward 3 residents in my mind as I participate in any discussions that might affect you. This includes the Fairgrounds Redevelopment Committee. I will not walk away. I will not quit. My opponent wants very badly to win this election. He wants it so badly he has started to show up at all sorts of places he never wanted to go before. He became interested in the Zoning Revisions Committee and in the North Street project. He wants to win so badly he changed the party he had been loyal to for 40 years, the Republican Party, to claim to be an independent the day before he took out papers. I am not running for city council because I want to block this city as it moves forward. I'm running because I want to put Ward 3 in the driver's seat. I will continue to work for Ward 3 no matter who wins this election. It's because I love the city and I love the vibrant neighborhoods that make it up. Your vote matters here. I'm asking for it because I'm committed to the hard work that needs to be done here in Ward 3. And I think it can lead this city as it goes forward. Thank you.
Tonight you've heard how we... Excuse me. Tonight you have heard how we would deal with issues facing Ward 3. You may agree or you may disagree with my positions. But before this debate concludes, I want all of you to know what a privilege it is for me to participate in an election. To participate in an election, this is what what makes our country the envy of the world. Being able to become a city councilor is a very rare opportunity. This campaign has given me the chance to connect with so many of you tonight. All of us realize that by working together, we can accomplish more as a group than we can as individuals. My goal is to have a chance to represent all of you so that our voice will be heard loud and clear at City Hall. And I would like to take this moment to personally thank you all for attending this debate. And in addition, I would like to invite you all to the opening of my campaign headquarters this coming Saturday, July 23rd at 11 Market Street from 3 to 5. Thank you again. God bless.
Listen to the moderator.
I think a few thanks indeed are in order. I think this was a very informative and interesting evening. I hope you all found it that way. I would like to thank the candidates for coming and being so forthcoming. I'd like to thank Mary Gottdiener for being a superlative timekeeper. I would like to thank all of you for coming, listening, and participating. I'd like to thank the Ward 3 Association for making all of this possible. And I wish you well in getting out the vote on August the 2nd.